Our next reader is Cari Lynn Jones. Cari grew up in a rural community on the east coast of South Florida and lives there still with her husband, daughter, and an ever-growing menagerie of helpful animals. I know a few thing or two about helpful animals myself. So, Cari, over to you.
Thank you, Elaine. Today I'll be reading from Chapter 3, A Bowl of Milk and Bread with Honey. After Lumina has already carried out her plan to steal the tribute left for the goblins and found unexpected help in doing so. The goblin turned back towards Hoax, who shimmered and shifted in the moonlight. Where once a tousled maned pony had stood, now was a large raven, stretching and shaking his wings, settling his feathers in place. Crow leapt lightly to the puka's back, the long tails of his great black coat blending with the midnight-colored plumage so perfectly that they almost seemed of a piece. He looked down at Lumina, and she thought that he might have smiled, though it was difficult to tell with a visage such as his. "Do not worry overly much about your debt to the Goblin King," Crow said. "He often has his mind turned to more pressing matters, and mayhap he will never collect. I will see you at moonrise tomorrow." And with that, Hoax launched them into the sky. Lumina did not stay to watch in which direction they flew. Instead, she turned, walking back to where Ember was waiting for her in the circle of white stones. The wood she had left for him had long ago turned to ash, but that mattered not at all to a salamander if he wished to stay. Still, it was courteous to provide him with more, as a hostess would provide her guests with food and drink. So she added more wood to the circle, Ember taking care not to come too close as she did. "Sweet one," he said, picking up a small twig and watching as it turned to ash in his fingers. "I am sure you know your own business, but I would offer you some advice. Beware of goblin gifts. Much like fairy gifts, they rarely come free." "Oh, I'm sure there will be a price," she said, tossing him a small twig which he caught. It too quickly turned to ash, leaving behind a wonderful piney scent. "Still, I worry less about the gifts I have yet to be given than the debts I have already gained." Had Lumina stayed to watch in which direction the raven and his passenger had flown, she might have seen them circle to land just above her on one of the lone pine's sheltering branches. Slipping off of Hoax's back, the goblin squatted down on the branch next to where the puka had perched. Neither the distance nor the foliage were obstacles that could stop them from seeing where the fairy and salamander were dancing below. The two moved in perfect harmony, around the circle of stones, the elemental within and the sprite without, flames flashing in the air between them as she tossed small offerings to the salamander. The wind carried the sweetly scented smoke up to the branch where he and the puka sat. Hoax leaned forward so that his eye was on level with the goblin squatting next to him. He cocked his head so that one eye looked down on the dancers below, while the other looked on the face of his companion. "Interesting sprite," commented the puka. "Yes," his companion replied. "And was the milk that her kitten lapped up so readily slated for the Goblin King's table?" he asked, still eyeing his companion. "It was." "Ah," said the puka, turning his full attention back to the sprite below. "That will bring trouble." "I'm sure it will." "It's been half a century since one of the fairy trespassed against us so blatantly. One wonders if it was softness or speculation that stayed your hand." The puka's comment was met only with silence. "And apparently I will continue to wonder," he sighed. "Still, she seemed quite anxious about the kitten. And then there's the elemental. Do you think he is here by his will or someone else's? Could she have bound him?" Again, he was met with silence. The puka sighed and ruffled his feathers. They stayed and watched as the night grew older until the dance reached its natural end. The dancers stood facing each other. The sprite reached up and plucked a single hair from her head, a shimmering strand of midnight blue which she tossed to the salamander. He caught it, and for the briefest instant it lay in his palm. Then with a flash of emerald light it was gone, but in its place was left a scent, a lovely scent, like the air just before a summer storm, sharp and clean and filled with life. Ah, so that answers that question, said Hoax. Still, I doubt it is much of a hardship being bound to her. What do you think, Crow? He asked, drawing out the name Lumina had given to the goblin next to him. Should I try it and see? What would a fairy maid do with one such as you? Why, every goblin knows that answer. She would do what all maids are wont to do, pluck out my eyes and break my heart in two. He finished with a flourish of wings and what might have been a grin on his raven's face. Thank you for listening to me. And if you have, I don't know, a liking for fairy tales and folklore and find tales about goblins and cursed kings and fairy queens, bargains made and promises kept, long-held animosity, and love yet to be found, then sign up at the end of the event for the giveaway and tell me what you think about Lumina and the Goblin King. Thank you again for your time.